Never believed in haunted houses. Not really. Old pipes groan, wood settles, wind finds its way through cracks, that's all ghosts ever are. Or so I told myself the night we moved into 24, Hemlock Lane. It was an old two-story house at the end of a quiet street, tucked behind a row of dying pines. The real estate agent called it a fixer-upper with character. My wife, Lena, loved the creaky charm of it. I loved the price. But there was one thing she didn't mention, something I only learned after signing the papers. The previous owners had left suddenly. No forwarding address, no reason, just gone. That first night, everything was quiet. We unpacked until midnight, had a bottle of cheap wine on the living room floor, and laughed about how the wind whistled through the chimney like a flute. Then, at 3:07 a.m., I woke up. Not to a noise, not exactly. It was more like a feeling. The kind that grabs the back of your neck before your brain catches up. The digital clock on the nightstand glowed red, 3:07. And then I heard it. A whisper. So faint I thought it might be the wind again. But no, it had shape, rhythm. Words. I couldn't understand them, but they came from the hallway just outside the bedroom. I held my breath, staring into the darkness. The sound faded after a few seconds, and I convinced myself I'd dreamed it. New house, unfamiliar sounds. Nothing to worry about. But the next night, at exactly 3:07, it happened again. This time, the whispers were clearer. A voice, low, hoarse, like someone breathing words into my ear. Don't open it. That's all I could make out before silence swallowed the house. I sat up, my heart pounding. Lena slept soundly beside me, unaware. I almost woke her, but something about the silence felt wrong, like the house was listening. The next morning, I tried to laugh it off. I even checked the hallway for drafts, loose vents, anything that might explain the sound. Nothing. The air was still, heavy, untouched. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the clock, waiting. 3:06. 3:07. The whisper came again, but closer this time. Right outside the bedroom door. It's behind the wall. My throat tightened. The voice wasn't angry or threatening. It sounded pleading. Desperate. I finally shook Lena awake. Did you hear that? I whispered. She blinked, confused. Hear what? But before I could answer, there was a knock, 3 soft taps, on the wall behind our bed. Tap. 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 We both froze. Lena's voice trembled. It's probably the pipes, she said, forcing a laugh. But I could see it in her eyes, she didn't believe it either. The next day, I tore the wallpaper off that wall, thinking maybe there was a loose vent or a hollow space. But when I ran my knuckles along the wood, it sounded solid. Except, one spot. A faint echo, like something hollow behind the plaster. That's when I noticed it, a small, circular mark near the baseboard. Like someone had once drilled a hole there, then painted over it. I grabbed a flashlight and pressed my eye to the faint dent. For a moment, I saw nothing. Just darkness. Then something moved inside. A flicker, a shift, like a shadow retreating from the light. I fell back, heart hammering, the flashlight clattering to the floor. When Lena came running in, I just said it was a mouse. But deep down, I knew what I'd seen didn't move like any mouse. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up in the living room, lights on, waiting for 3:07. The house felt heavier in the dark, like the air itself was watching. Every creak of the floorboards made me flinch. I told myself I wouldn't look at the clock. I wouldn't give in. But my eyes betrayed me. 3:07. The whispers began again, this time from the walls around me. Everywhere. They layered over each other, hundreds of faint voices. Men, women, children, all whispering at once. I couldn't make out the words. It was like 1,000 breaths weaving through the wood. And then, beneath all of it, one voice rose clearer than the rest. He never left. The lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then went out. I froze in pitch blackness. The whispers stopped. Total silence. And then, footsteps. Slow. Heavy. From upstairs. One step at a time, moving toward the stairs. I grabbed a kitchen knife, my pulse thundering in my ears. The floorboards above creaked as something, or someone, crossed the hallway. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, staring up into the dark. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice shaking. No answer. But then, a soft sound, like fabric brushing wood, came from the top of the stairs. I raised the knife, every muscle in my body locked. And then I saw it. A faint glow. Not light, more like a shimmer, barely visible. It hovered at the top step, motionless, like the outline of something human made of smoke and dust. I blinked, and it was gone. The whispers stopped. The air felt thin. And somewhere deep inside the walls, I heard a faint scratching sound, like nails dragging slowly across wood. When the sun rose, the house looked normal again. No marks, no lights, no sound. But something had changed. I found a handprint on the inside of the living room window. Small. Pale. Pressed against the glass from the inside. Lena swore she hadn't seen it before. I wanted to believe her. That night, I told myself I'd record everything, prove it was just creaks and pipes. So I set my phone to record audio and placed it on the nightstand. I fell asleep sometime after midnight. When I woke the next morning, the clock read 6:45. The phone was still recording. I hit play. For the first 3 hours, silence. Then, right at 3:07 a.m., the whisper returned. "Don't open the wall." And then, another voice. Fainter. Deeper. He already did. When I heard that second voice on the recording, my blood went cold. He already did. I replayed it again and again, hoping it was some glitch, a trick of static, but no. The tone was too real, too human. A man's voice, distant but certain, like someone speaking from inside the walls. Lena was still asleep. I didn't wake her. I couldn't. I just sat there in the dim light, staring at the wall behind our bed, the one I'd already peeled half the wallpaper from. The one that had echoed. That morning, I pretended everything was fine. Made coffee. Talked about maybe repainting the kitchen. But every time I glanced at that wall, my stomach twisted. I told myself I wouldn't go near it again. I even moved the bed to the other side of the room. But that night, when 3:07 came around, the whispers returned, louder than before. They didn't come from the hallway this time. They came from the wall. "He's still here. He can't leave. Don't open it." The voices bled through the plaster like air escaping lungs. I pressed my ear against the wall, and I swear, I felt warmth radiating through it, like there was something alive on the other side. Lena woke up to find me standing there, whispering back. I don't even remember what I was saying, just mumbling, trying to make sense of it. "Tom, what are you doing?" she asked. "Listen," I said. "They're talking." She didn't hear anything. She looked at me the way people look at someone who's lost their grip on reality. The next morning, she told me she wanted to stay with her sister for a few days, just until we settled in. I didn't argue. I told her to go. Part of me thought the whispers wouldn't follow if she left. That night, I was alone in the house. And at 3:07 a.m., the whispers turned into knocking. Soft, rhythmic, from inside the wall. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. I grabbed a flashlight and my phone. I started recording video this time. If this is some kind of trick, I whispered to myself, I'll find it. The knocking stopped as soon as I pointed the light. But the moment I turned away, tap, tap, tap. Always behind me. Always just out of reach. I followed the sound down the hall, through the narrow corridor, until I reached the door to the basement. It was an old wooden door, warped from age. The air around it felt colder, heavy, like it didn't belong to the rest of the house. And then, faintly, from behind the door, I heard breathing. Slow. Ragged. Human. I stepped back, the flashlight trembling in my hand. I don't know why I did it, maybe some morbid curiosity, but I called out. Who's down there? For a moment, nothing. Then, softly, a whisper that seemed to crawl up the stairs. You opened the wall. My throat closed. I hadn't. Not yet. But the voice sounded so sure. I slammed the basement door and backed away. I didn't sleep that night. When Lena called the next morning, I lied. Told her everything was fine. She said she'd be back in a couple of days. I didn't want her here. Not until I knew what I was dealing with. So I went into town. Found the property records. The house had been built in 1912, owned by a man named Raymond Alcott. He lived there alone for years, until he disappeared, right around 1938. The file said, missing person presumed dead. No one ever found him. But there was a note scribbled on the back of one of the papers, almost like a warning. Do not remove the wall. He's still inside. I felt my stomach drop. The whispers, the knocking, the voice saying, he never left. It all fit. I went home before sunset. The house felt different. Like it knew I knew. Every step echoed too long, every shadow lingered too close. At 3:07 that night, I was ready. Camera on. Flashlight ready. The whispers began again. This time, they weren't pleading. They were chanting. He's awake. He's awake. He's awake. The temperature in the room plummeted. My breath fogged in the air. And then the wall bulged. Just slightly, like something pushing from the other side. I stumbled back, heart slamming in my chest. The bulge pulsed once, twice, then stopped. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a hammer. Each swing echoed like thunder through the quiet house. Plaster shattered, dust filled the air. Behind the first layer of drywall, I found something older, wooden boards, cracked and darkened with age. And carved into the wood, in jagged, uneven letters, were the words. Do not open. But something was scratching from behind it, slow, deliberate, like fingernails dragging downward. I hit the boards again, once, twice, until one of them splintered open. A foul, stagnant smell hit me like a wall. Rot, damp, something old. I shone the flashlight into the gap, and froze. There was a space behind the wall. A narrow, hidden crawl space between the beams. And inside it, something moved. Not fast. Not animal-like. Slow. Controlled. I lifted the flashlight, my hand trembling, and for a second, I saw it. A hand. Pale. Thin. Fingernails long and black with dirt. Pressing against the inside of the wall. I stumbled back, dropping the light. When I scrambled to pick it up again, the hand was gone. But the whisper came right against my ear, clear and human, as if someone were standing inches from my face. Now you've done it. I ran out of the room, down the hall, out into the freezing night. Didn't stop until I was standing in the middle of the yard, gasping for breath. The house loomed in front of me, dark windows staring back like hollow eyes. And then, from inside, I saw a figure move past the upstairs window. Lena wasn't home. I was the only one who had been inside. The next morning, I packed a bag. I told myself I'd leave, sell the house, never come back. But something inside me couldn't let go. That night, I drove back one last time. Just to grab the camera. Just to prove I wasn't insane. When I stepped inside, the air was cold and still. Dust hung like fog in the flashlight beam. Everything was quiet. Until I looked at the wall. The hole I'd broken open was wider now. Much wider. The boards had been pulled apart, from the inside. Something had come out. And carved into the floor beneath the hole, written in fresh, dark letters, was a single sentence. 3:07 is when he wakes. The words on the floor wouldn't leave my head. 3:07 is when he wakes. They looked fresh, wet, almost. Like someone had carved them only hours before. And yet, the air around me was still, cold, dead. I thought about calling the police, but what would I even say? Hello, there's a whisper in my wall and someone's carving messages in my floor. No one would believe that. I barely believed it myself. Still, I couldn't leave. Not yet. I had to see what was behind that wall. I set up my flashlight on the dresser, the beam pointing directly into the gaping hole. Dust drifted through the air like falling ash. The crawl space beyond looked endless, just dark wood and shadows. The smell of rot was stronger now. Something old, something wrong. I knelt beside the hole, took a deep breath, and crawled inside. It was tighter than I expected. I had to crouch low, the wood scraping against my back. The further I moved, the colder it got. My breath came out in pale fog. After a few feet, the beam of my flashlight caught something on the wall, scratch marks. Hundreds of them. Long, frantic lines gouged deep into the wood, as if someone had clawed at it for years. And then I saw it. A shape, slumped in the corner. At first, I thought it was a pile of rags, but then the light caught bone. A skull. A human skeleton, folded in on itself like it had died trying to crawl out. The name, R. Alcott, was scratched faintly into the wood beside it. Raymond Alcott. The original owner. I should have felt horror, but what I felt was pity. Whoever he was, he'd been buried alive in his own house. Maybe the whispers were him, crying for help all these years. But as I stared at the bones, I noticed something else. The skeleton's fingers were curled around something, a small, rusted locket. I reached out, hesitating only a moment before prying it loose. Inside was a faded photograph, a woman, holding a baby. On the back, scratched into the metal, were 3 words. He took them. The flashlight flickered. Once. Twice. Then went out. I froze, my breath quickening. In the dark, I heard movement, the dry rustle of something shifting just inches away. Then, faintly, a whisper. He took me. The bones weren't still anymore. I scrambled backward, hitting my head against the low ceiling. My hands clawed for the exit, heart slamming in my chest. I could feel something moving behind me, slow, deliberate, following. I burst out of the hole and spun around with the flashlight. The beam shook wildly over the wall, the floor, the ceiling, nothing. The crawl space was empty. But the whispers hadn't stopped. They filled the entire house now, from every wall, every corner, every vent. He's awake. He's here. He never left. I staggered to my feet, gasping. My phone was still on the dresser, recording everything. The screen glowed red. Then, over the sound of the whispers, came footsteps. Slow. Heavy. From the hallway. They stopped just outside the bedroom door. I stared at the crack beneath it, and saw shadows shifting, like someone pacing back and forth. Who's there? I shouted, my voice cracking. The footsteps stopped. And then, from the other side of the door, a voice. Deep. Calm. Familiar. You shouldn't have opened it. It wasn't the whisper. It was a man's voice. Real. Solid. Close. I took a step back, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. What do you want? I yelled. Silence. Then, softly. It's not me you should fear. The door creaked open on its own. Just a few inches. Enough for the darkness behind it to look alive. And from that darkness, a hand reached through. The same pale, dirt-caked hand I'd seen behind the wall. I stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of the bed. The hand grabbed the doorframe, pulling the rest of it forward, the outline of a man, half covered in dust and shadows. But his face, God, his face, was wrong. Parts of it looked human, but other parts were sunken, hollow. Like something had eaten him from the inside and left only what it needed to move. Raymond Alcott? I whispered. The figure tilted its head, bones cracking with the motion. Its mouth opened, a dark void inside. He took me, it hissed. Now he'll take you. The lights exploded, every bulb in the room shattering at once. Glass rained down as I screamed and bolted for the door. The hallway twisted in the dark, longer than before. Every step I took echoed wrong, like I was walking deeper into something that didn't end. The whispers chased me, dozens of them, screaming now. He's awake. Don't look back. He's behind you. I hit the front door, yanked it open, and froze. The world outside wasn't dark anymore. It was gray. Still. Every sound, gone. The trees didn't move. The wind didn't blow. The whole world looked frozen in time. And on the front porch, standing where I should have been safe, was another version of me. Same face. Same clothes. But his eyes, they were black. He smiled, tilting his head just slightly. Told you not to open it. The door slammed shut on its own, throwing me backward. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the bedroom floor again. The sun was shining through the curtains. Morning. It was all gone. The hole in the wall was sealed, clean plaster smooth and unbroken. My phone was dead. The recording, erased. I tried to tell Lena everything when she came home. She listened, nodded, smiled in that careful way people do when they think you've lost it. But that night, she woke me up. Tom, she whispered, shaking me. Did you hear that? I blinked, disoriented. Hear what? She turned toward the wall, her eyes wide. The whispers. They said my name. I sat up slowly, dread curling through me. The clock on the nightstand glowed red. 3:07 a.m. The whisper came again, clear, cold, and unmistakably familiar. Don't open it, again. I turned toward the wall, and saw a crack forming, spreading like a vein. Inside it, something moved. And beneath the whisper, I heard a low voice, mine. He already did.